So a student of mine was getting ready to play violin. His bow wasn't on the string yet. His arm was fully extended, the bow nowhere near the instrument, and he was already tensing up. Many musicians and music teachers don't have a clear idea for what to do to release this kind of tension, and I'm about to show you how. So my name is Joseph Arnold. I'm a professional violinist, a certified Alexander technique teacher, and the author of Soulforce. By the end of this video, you're going to learn why your tension starts even before you begin playing, how to find the exact moment when it kicks in, and what to do when the trigger turns out to be something no stretch or warm-up can fix. So again, I was working with this violinist who came to me because his bow arm and his shoulder was tight, he had injuries, and he had tension the moment he put his bow on the string. So I asked him to pause right before that moment, just to stop and notice what was happening in his body and let things settle down before continuing. And it helped. He was less tense, but he was still tense. So we went even earlier. He noticed that his arm started tightening when his elbow was about here. And so I had him pause before that. And he was still tense. So we kept going back in time in the movement. So his arm was completely extended, the bow nowhere near the violin, and he was still getting tight. And that's when I realized it wasn't the physical act of bowing that triggered the tension. It was the thought about playing. So the stimulus wasn't external, it was internal. And that changes everything about how you address it, which I'll show you in just a minute. So first, let's talk about why this is so much more common than you might think. Every coordination habit, every pattern of tension in your playing works through stimulus and response. Something happens and your body reacts. So most of the time, we think of the stimulus as something external. Here's that tricky passage that you see on the page. The conductor lifts the baton. You reach for a high note. These are moments when most teachers and practice methods focus on, and they are real, but they're not the whole picture. So sometimes the stimulus is internal. It's the thought of doing something, the anticipation of a difficult passage before you even get there. It's the pain or tension itself. You feel tightness, and that becomes the stimulus to tense up even more because you're fighting it, right? Which makes it worse. Or it's something you'd never expect. So what are your biggest stimuluses for tension? Let me know in the comments below. I read every one. So I had a student, I'll call her Marie, who went to vacation in Europe and watched a street musician playing violin in a town square. Marie wasn't playing. She was standing in the crowd listening, but she noticed her own shoulders climbing up towards her ears, her jaw clenching, her hands tightening just from watching someone else play. So this is anticipatory tension in its purest form. And the stimulus for Marie's tension wasn't the instrument, obviously, the passage or the performance. It was the idea of playing, triggered by seeing someone else do it. Her body had learned to associate violin, even the concept of it, with tension. But here's the good news. A learned pattern can be unlearned. And in a moment, I'll show you exactly how to find where yours starts. But there's a reason why the most common advice doesn't work for this. If you're tensing up before you play, no amount of stretching will solve the problem. You can do every shoulder roll and wrist stretch in the book. You could but when you pick up your instrument, you tense right back up. The stretch addresses the symptom, not the stimulus. So the same goes for most practice techniques. Playing slowly, using different rhythms, breaking passages down into small chunks. These are very useful. But if you carry a coordination habit through all of them, is this really the right technique? How do you know it's the right technique? You can practice slowly and still grip your way through every note, right? So the standard approach misses two things. First, that tension happens at critical moments, specific points where the stimulus fires and the habit kicks in. You don't need to relax your whole body, you just need to find the moment. Second, that the stimulus can be internal, a thought, a sensation, an expectation, and no external fix can reach an internal trigger. So what does work? The first step is finding when the tension actually starts. Not when you notice it, when it begins. These are often different. Most musicians notice tension after it's already been running for a while, like realizing you've been clenching your jaw for the last 10 minutes. So here's what I do with students. I have them slow the whole process down. Not just the playing, but the preparation. We take the instrument out of the case. What's happening in your body? You set up your music stand. What's happening in your body? You're tuning. What's happening in your body? And you pay attention. When does the narrowing begin? When do you start making a beeline for your case, focused so hard that everything else disappears? So some students tense up when their instrument hits their shoulder. Sometimes they tense when they see that first note on the page. Some, like my student, tense when they think about what's coming. So once you find the critical moment, you have your leverage point. You pause there, not to stretch, not to take a deep breath, not even to try to relax, just to pause, to interrupt the automatic stimulus response loop and give yourself a choice you didn't have before. You notice the habit, let it settle, and then you continue without it. And this is what I call the magic pause, and it works because it interrupts the pattern at the source. So if you pause and the tension is still there, you haven't found the actual critical moment yet. Go earlier, keep walking it back, the way I did with my student at the beginning, until you find the point where the habit truly begins. But sometimes you find the critical moment, you pause, and there's still something underneath, something driving the anticipation itself. And this is where it gets really interesting. So when I explored what was underneath Marie's patterns, why she tensed up just watching someone else play, she discovered something. Her driving thought when it came to music was, I want to make them like me. If that seems familiar to you, put a comment below. And so this is not who she truly was, though, right? She grew up with anxious caretakers in a culture of conditional love. This is what she inherited. She inherited her purpose, which was seeking approval through her playing. And to your nervous system, this is an impossible demand. You can't guarantee that people will like you if you get the notes right. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But because she believed this old story, then every note became a test. And her nervous system responded to that pressure in the only way it knew how, by bracing. So a fearful story like that makes you hypervigilant. It fires your tension response earlier and stronger. But a more empowered story, one that's more true to who you actually are, reduces the fear and gives you a choice and poise in the critical moment. The things that used to bother you simply don't carry the same charge. So I saw something similar during my own Alexander Technique teacher training. An oboist was receiving a lesson in front of the group. She said that she hated carving her reeds, but she had to do it because that's what oboists do. So she was tense, frustrated, and pushing through the task. The teacher said, when you're carving your reeds, why don't you think about the sound that you would like to have? And everything changed. Her body softened. Her attitude shifted. She wasn't suddenly thrilled about carving reeds, but the tension and the frustration dissolved. The teacher gave her a different purpose, one connected to what she actually cared about. And that new orientation changed her entire physical, emotional, mental response. And so that's the deeper lesson. The way that you think itself can be the stimulus for tension or freedom. You don't have to make anything happen. You just have to notice what story is running and whether it's actually yours. So the next time you sit down to practice, pay attention to what happens before you play. Not just during, but before. Watch yourself take out your instrument. Notice the moment your body starts to narrow, to grip, to prepare for battle. Watch out for the thought that arises that causes your tension. It probably happens before you even notice your body getting tight. And that is your critical moment. And now you know what to do with it. All right, if you're a musician dealing with tension that starts even before you begin playing, there's a link in the description below to book a free 15-minute call with me. We could talk about what's happening and whether this approach might help. And I'm curious, if you've ever noticed have you ever noticed yourself getting tense even before you start playing something? You're looking at that page, you're seeing all those notes, or you're thinking about that high note, and you already get tense. What's that like for you? What happens for you? What are you thinking about? Let me know in the comments below. All right, that's all for today. I'll see you next time.